Hey guys, welcome to another video about human body anatomy and physiology. Today we'll take an exciting journey into the fascinating world of respiration. If you're curious about the secrets of how we breathe, then this video is right for you. We'll mainly cover the mechanics of breathing, so without further ado, let's get started. Before we delve into the mechanics of breathing, let's understand why breathing is so important for our daily functioning. So, breathing is a fundamental process that supplies our bodies with oxygen, which is essential for the production of energy and our survival. And let's see how this incredible process works. Our respiratory system is the key player in the process of breathing. There are generally two types of respiration. The first type is called cellular respiration, the other is called external respiration. So, cellular respiration is a process that takes place inside our cells, where they convert nutrients like glucose and oxygen into energy, which is in the form of ATP, and carbon dioxide and water. External respiration is the process of exchanging gases between our body and the external environment. So it happens in our lungs, where we breathe in oxygen from the air and release carbon dioxide back into the air when we breathe out. External respiration is where breathing takes place through four integrated processes, which are known as ventilation and gas exchange, which we will talk about in a bit. So now let's talk about the anatomy of the respiratory system. So what does it consist of? The respiratory system generally consists of three main structures. So the first structure is the bones and the muscles of the thorax and the abdomen that provide support for the function of ventilation. So this includes various organs such as the nose, the mouth, trachea, lungs, and diaphragm. So these are located in the thorax and abdomen. Next, in the second structure, there's the conducting systems. So these are airways that lead to the external environment from the exchange surface in the lungs. And then the third structure is the alveoli system. So alveoli are tiny air sacs within the lungs where gas exchange happens. Think of these as tiny balloons where oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged between the air and the blood. And this process fuels our body with oxygen and helps us get rid of carbon dioxide. Now let's look closer into the conducting systems. So in the conducting systems, there are two tracts, the upper tract and the lower tract. The upper respiratory tract consists of the mouth, nasal cavity, pharynx, vocal cords, esophagus, and larynx. Then we see the lower respiratory tract, which consists of the trachea, two primary bronchi, and the lungs. The airways that connect the lungs to the external environment follow this order from the mouth to pharynx, larynx, trachea, primary bronchi, bronchioles, and alveoli. So the main functions of this system are first, to warm air to maintain body temperature and homeostasis. Second, to add water vapor to create moisture throughout the body. And lastly, to filter out materials from the foreign environments. As we go deeper into the alveoli from the primary and secondary bronchi, we will see these air-filled balloons at the end of the conducting systems. So they're connecting to the bronchiole, which is a tree-like branch from the primary bronchus, connecting to trachea and the larynx. On the alveoli, there is a thin layer of chemical called surfactant. This allows the lung expansion and a contraction during breathing because it works like a lubricant that reduces surface tension at the lung walls. It's like when you're blowing a dry balloon, the rubber tends to stick together, making it hard to inflate. But with some lubricant, the rubbers become stretchy and inflatable. So together, these organs work in harmony to enable respiration. Now let's talk about ventilation or respiratory cycle. A single respiratory cycle consists of an inspiration followed by an expiration. So this is inhale and exhale. Let's focus on inhalation first. This is the first step in the breathing process. So as you breathe in, air enters through your nose and mouth, passing through the trachea and into your lungs. The primary muscle that's responsible for this process is the diaphragm. So as we can see, the air goes into our lungs from our mouth, and this needs space in our lung to expand. And the diaphragm as a muscle contracts during inhaling, so this allows the lung to expand, creating more thoracic volume. However, when you exhale, the air needs to go out from your lungs, so it needs a pressure or a force to push the air outward. So during the second step of breathing, the diaphragm relaxes and moves upward to its original position, reducing the space in the chest cavity. So this causes the air pressure in the lungs to increase, and as a result, the air is forced out. Now you may wonder, does our breathing simply work like blowing in and out of a balloon? Well, the answer is much more fascinating than that. The way clinicians now measure our lung volume and capacity is by using a spirometer. This is an instrument that allows us to measure the volume of air moving in and out with each breath. To make this easy to understand, I would like to use a graph that shows the relationship between lung volumes and breathing time. So at baseline, when we are breathing naturally and quietly, there is a tidal volume of around 500 milliliters of air in our lungs. And the primary muscles that enable quiet breathing are diaphragm, external intercostal muscles, and scalenus. And as you exhale forcefully, you release an expiratory reserve volume around 700 to 1100 milliliters. Then, when you inhale forcefully, you take in a significant inspiratory reserve volume around 900 to 3000 milliliters. So during forceful breathing, intercostal muscles and other muscles in the abdomen and chest are involved. Notice, even when we exhale, our lungs do not empty out completely. There is still a remaining 1200 milliliters of residual volume in your lungs. So, by definition, the total lung capacity is the total of everything, the inspiratory reserve volume and the tidal volume, and expiratory reserve volume and residual volume, which is the total amount of air moving in and out of your lungs. The vital capacity, however, is the total of forceful inhalation and exhalation. So this excludes the tidal volume and residual volume. An analogy to this is a water tank. So imagine you have two tubes that are responsible for forceful breathing, the inhaling and exhaling, and then another tube that's responsible for quiet breathing, so effortless breathing. So tidal volume is the regular level of water you use to fill and empty out the tank with each cycle. So this is enabled by the baseline tube. The IRV is the extra amount of air or water you can inhale after a normal breath. So think of it as the additional water you can pour into the tank after filling it up to its regular level. Then the IRV is the additional water you can drain out from the tank below its regular level at baseline. And then the residual volume is like the little bit of water at the bottom that remains in the tank even after you try to empty the water out completely. So the total lung capacity can be seen as the total amount of water in the tank, and the vital capacity can be seen as the water flowing in and out of the tank. Another key concept in the mechanics of breathing is the pressure in our lungs. So, as we know, our lungs are stretchable and contractible. And so when it stretches, it becomes compliant, meaning there's a change in volume due to a change in pressure. On the other hand, when it contracts, the lungs become elastic, meaning there's a resisting force from being stretched. So the amount of air you breathe in is closely related to pressure in your lungs because airflow follows a pressure gradient. We can also understand this from the Boyle's gas law, which says that the pressure and volume are inversely related. Take alveolar pressure as an example. When inhaling, the pressure inside the alveolar sacs decreases due to an increased volume created by the diaphragm contraction and the expansion of the rib cage. During exhalation, the alveolar pressure increases as air gets pushed out by the abdomen contraction and intercostal muscles. As a result, the mechanics of airflow during breathing follows the Boyle's gas law. So when volume increases, the pressure decreases, and vice versa. Now you might be wondering, how does our body know when to inhale and exhale? Well, the control of breathing is actually managed by our brain, specifically the medulla oblongata. This is located at the bottommost part of the brain and it helps control vital processes like your heartbeat, breathing, and blood pressure because it's connecting to the spinal cord. So during breathing, it monitors the levels of carbon dioxide and pH level in our blood. When these levels change, it signals the respiratory muscles to adjust our breathing rates. And based on this signal, we adjust our breathing styles and rhythms. For example, breathing during exercise is different from our regular breathing. When we are physically active, our muscles require more oxygen to produce energy. So our breathing rate and depth increase to deliver more oxygen to the working muscles to meet our body's demand. This connection to the brain implies that controlled breathing is an easy way to build a mind-body connection, and practicing this mindful breathing not only allows better exchange of oxygen and more lung capacity, but it also helps our brain to establish a better understanding of our own body, including how we breathe and the way we breathe in different situations. Before we wrap up, let's think about the impact of smoking on our respiratory system. Smoking damages the cilia in our airways, and cilia are air-like structures that help move the mucus towards the pharynx, removing pathogens and dust out of the throat. So, damage to cilia leads to an accumulation of mucus and pollutants in the lungs. Over time, this can cause chronic respiratory issues and increase the risk of lung diseases like chronic bronchitis, which is an infection in the lung airways, as well as lung cancer. That concludes today's video. Remember to always take a deep breath and be mindful of your breathing because you can't imagine how much benefits it brings to our body. Thanks for watching.